So I've been paying attention to the controversy with AIG lately. About the last week, there have been a couple articles I've read about AIG, who received $170 billion in bailout money from the government, was going to pay their executives $165 million in bonuses very soon, like for the upcoming year. And of course, that made people really upset because it's just another example of the perceived fiscal irresponsibility of these big network execs who don't seem to have, they don't think about the plight of the taxpayers, and everybody's up in arms because, you know, people are having to do extra things to get by, and these big execs are getting millions of dollars. I think the first payout was something like each executive will get like $110,000 as a bonus. Like, that's not their salary. That's on top of what they're already making. And that's a lot of money. And people are upset about this. So basically, the Obama administration, they're trying to find a way to keep AIG from paying that bonus money to their executives. And on the one hand, that seems fair, because your company has just gotten bailed out by taxpayers, and then you're using a very large portion of money to pay as bonuses, not salary, for, you know, your top 50 or whatever executives who already make a lot of money. Now, I'm not here to argue whether or not, you know, they deserve the money, because if you're the top executive of a huge financial firm, you probably deserve the money you make to some extent. I mean, I don't know what it takes to run AIG, and I'm not here to argue whether or not they deserve the salary they make based on their performance. But anyway, what is a big deal is, you know, the $165 million in bonuses, which apparently AIG is contractually obligated to pay to their executives before the recession even began. They said about a year ago, and before they knew that there was any indication that there was going to be a recession and that they were going to need to be bailed out by taxpayer money, they had agreed to pay these bonuses to the tune of $165 million to their executives. So they said their hands are tied and that they can't really do anything but pay. Makes sense. Interesting thing, though, I think it was only 6 or 7, as of a couple days ago, only 6 or 7 of the executives were saying that they were going to turn down the bonuses out of 50-ish. Another interesting thing, I mean, I don't know if there's any moral obligation to turn down a bonus. Certainly we would all make the case that they don't need another $110,000. I could use $110,000, I'll tell you that. I mean, you can go to college for $100,000. But what is interesting is that the Obama administration, and Obama said he wanted to block this money from getting to them, and they could do that by one of two ways: by trying to pass some injunction or whatever on AIG to keep them from being able to use the money towards that goal, or by taking $165 million out of the $170 billion, and make them kind of rework the way that if they do want to pay that $165 million, they're going to have to find it from somewhere else. They're going to have to reallocate funds into the bonus fund. And like I said, on the one hand, it's interesting. It's a good point that, you know, we're trying to encourage fiscal responsibility, so we want to keep big companies from doing things like this, because obviously, you know, Joe Schmo on the street doesn't see why another big exec needs another $100,000. We want to have companies that look good in the public eye and that are being fiscally responsible. But on the other hand, I'm not really sure that it's the government's place to say that while they have given them the money, they decided to give them the money, and it seemed like, I'm speaking a little bit out of ignorance here, but it seemed like they didn't say, well, they're you can't do this with our money. Once we've given you this money, you can only do so many things, or else this wouldn't be an issue. Because if they had said, we're going to give you government bailout money, but you cannot use it for bonuses, it wouldn't be an issue. They'd just be like, okay, well, we got to find our bonus money from somewhere else or not have bonuses. That being said, I don't know if how much in line with the ideals of American economics, capitalism, trying to prevent, or I think block was the term that Obama actually used, to block them from paying the bonuses, because I think it really smacks of redistribution of wealth, which, if you know anything about any type of socialist reforms, you know that that's a big step towards big socialist reforms. And all the socialist revolutions in the last 200 years, they all began with the redistribution of wealth. The people who have a lot of money have their money taken from them and given to the poor people so that everybody's equal. That's, basic socialism. And, well, I don't know that, morally, that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. It's terribly inconsistent with the way that we say that we want to run our economy and want things to work here in America. So, I don't know. Can the government really say, well, we can't pay you? Like, you can't pay your employees their bonuses? I guess. But I don't know. It really smacks of some dangerous ideals that I think we've typically avoided in American history. I mean, you look at it, up to a certain point, socialism was cool here in America. Eugene V. Debs ran for president 20 years, five times in a row, and he had a decent following. And then communism happened, and then gone. There was no American Socialist Party for 30 years. The Red Scare in the 50s. Everything was hyper capitalism, hyper American ideals, and anything that even hinted at communism or socialist reform, despite the whole FDR administration. But people didn't seem to really care then because there was a depression. But especially after World War II, anything that even hinted of communism, because there was those dirty Reds, that's a big deal. And now I think we're kind of seeing that shift back. And now that we're in an economic crisis similar to that of the Depression in the 30s, I actually just read that somebody said that Obama inherited a worse economic situation than Roosevelt did during the Depression, that's something to say. Now, I don't know if I agree. But it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So think on these things.